Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today and letting us know where you're joining us from. We are so excited to have Jacquelyn Thorp presenting with us today. We just want to let you know up front, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send out a link to that recording a little later today, along with some information. Jacquelyn has some things that we're going to share with you. This webinar is pre-approved for recertification credits. In order to qualify for the credit, you do have to attend the full webinar. And so we will verify attendance at the webinar and send and email you the activity code later. It will not be included in this presentation. It will be sent to you later. If you have questions as we go, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A section, and we will help field those to Jacquelyn, and maybe we'll have a little bit of time at the end to answer some questions. We'll see how things go. So I am Terry Varnell with HRCP, and Jacquelyn Thorp is a dear friend and one of my favorite people in the world. So I'm going to turn it over to Jacquelyn, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Terry. Wow, look at all these people coming in. This is really exciting. I actually see a Q&A already coming in. So one of the things I wanted to let everybody know right up front is this is a 1-hour presentation. So it's designed for the trainer to train in 1 hour. Now, I'm assuming we're all trainers. So as we go through this, go ahead and type your questions into chat. At the end of the presentation, so we can get through it, I have saved some time for us to do a Q&A. And on top of that, I'll stay late if we need to. So I like to respect everybody's time because we think it's a 1 hour and we've set aside a 1 hour. So hopefully we can get through all of this. So as Terry said, my name is Jacquelyn Thorp, and we have known each other, I'm thinking, for about 20 years now. But here's the funny part. I started doing anti-harassment training in 1980. Please type in the chat how many of you weren't born yet. And back then, it was a completely different ballgame than what you know now. Back then, I took a 15-minute video. I set them down in a conference room with some sweet rolls and coffee. They watched the video, they left, and they were trained. All right. That is not the way it works anymore. So fast forward to 2024, and we have really evolved in what our training requirements are. So I see so many of you from different states, and as we go through this, you can actually use this presentation for all of your states. There are 8 states that have very specific, very special rules. And I'm going to show you where you can weave that into this presentation. This particular presentation, of course, is California because I'm from California. Whatever state that you're from, we actually have slides that you can insert for those states. Also, this is the employee version. Some states don't know the difference between an employee version and a supervisor version. However, the supervisor version is available to you through our training program. The other thing is, I'm putting a 4-hour presentation, a 4-hour workshop that we would normally do, into 1 hour for you. So hopefully we can move on and get through this. So I'm going to stop chatting about myself and the program and get moving. I will tell you that I am SPHR certified, that I have used HRCP materials for all of my certification programs. I'm PHR California certified. And I will tell you that while you can purchase the PHR California book on the HRCP website, I actually wrote it along with my staff. So that's one of the one of the areas that I really specialize in is California law. So if you have employees in California, don't hesitate to ask questions about California specific stuff. All right, check this out. This is designed literally for you to put your own logo onto the presentation. You can also remove Train Me Today. Everything in this presentation is actually customizable by you. So you can put all your company information on there. Where it says presented by right here, I put Train Me Today. You will put your name or your workplace, depending on what you're doing. Now, along with this presentation, I have included a document called Tips for Engaging Adult Webinar Students, okay? This is going to be provided to you through HRCP. And one of the #1 items on this is start with clear objectives. So we are trainers, and part of this is going to be delivered as if you weren't trainers, as if you were students in your organization. So the objectives of this program are to provide the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed to work in a workplace culture of respect and civility. And that's why we call this program Promoting a Respectful Workplace rather than sexual harassment training or anti-harassment training. We call this Promoting a Respectful Workplace. And the objective is to provide information to our students about how to have a more productive and fulfilling workplace, how to actually recognize disrespectful or abusive behavior, and then how to stop unproductive behavior before it rises to the level of illegal harassment. Now, in California, we have something, and I'm sure each one of your states has something similar to this. In California, we literally call it California's Sexual Harassment Fact Sheet. In each of your states, and in some cities, New York City actually has their own, you will find a form like this. So when you're getting ready to do the training, you want to go on to your state's probably you'll find it in different places. It'll be a government form, and you can just type into your search engine sexual harassment fact sheet, and more than likely it'll pop up for your state if you put it in there. You can use this PowerPoint presentation as your handout. We have an exercise called Everyone Has a Voice, and it's very powerful, and I'll tell you about that later. Everyone will receive a certificate and acknowledgement form, and on it, it will include your certification so that you can, just type everything in and not have to go in with a long description into wherever you have your certification from. And then I would like to also see a training evaluation. So I like to see a training evaluation for this course, but always include a training evaluation when you're doing the training. Make sure that each one of your students always receives a certificate of attendance. And basically what it says is that they attended the class. And this is really important because if you ever get into not even a lawsuit, but just somebody has claimed discrimination, they've reported it to the EEOC, you are going to need to have evidence that this person attended the class. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a certificate of completion and acknowledgement form. Now, a lot of people have just a basic certificate. That's really not good enough. What you're really looking for is this section in here. And in here, it says that they've received a copy of the company's harassment prevention policy, that they know how to report harassment if they are or they know of somebody who's being harassed. I'm going to talk a little bit about bystander training. You understand your responsibility, either as an employee or a supervisor. You will read and comply with the policy, and you know who to ask if you have questions. And if you're doing the training, you're the person that they're going to ask, along with, of course, their supervisors. And depending on each state might have their own process for that. We'll actually get into a process. Now, this is kind of interesting. It's some introductory statistics that took place in 2021. I don't think a lot has changed in the last 3 years, but it was done by a company called All Voices, and it was the state of workplace harassment. In it, we discovered that 44% of employees have experienced harassment at work. So that's roughly, half of the employees. 38% have experienced harassment remotely. So this is something that's really changed since COVID, since 2019. We honestly, as an HR consultant, my clients have brought me stuff that was weird, remote harassment long before we saw this study. But we know that 38% experienced harassment remotely. 34% have left their jobs because of unresolved harassment. And 50% have reported just being harassed. And 85% would have reported harassment with an anonymous channel. So those are just some interesting statistics. I'm not a big believer in statistics, but I did find this interesting because it seems to play out with what we have experienced as trainers over the years. All right, why is harassment illegal? I mean, everybody thinks, gosh, that's such a logical question. It's just bad. But the answer is that harassment is actually a form of illegal discrimination. So harassment itself, if you're just not a very nice person, and I know there are times when I feel harassed. I'm sure you guys all get those phone calls from, I don't know, any type of telemarketers. If you answer it, it begins to feel like a form of harassment, but it's not. It's illegal harassment if it is based on a protected category. So harassment is illegal if it's based on a legally protected category, and this has been the law since I started teaching in 1980. It creates an intimidating or hostile work environment. It adversely impacts an individual's employment opportunities, or it unreasonably interferes with an individual's work. What is a legally protected category? Now, here's something interesting. As we're going through this, normally I would wait for a student to answer this question. So most supervisors do know the answer to this question. I'm sure all of you out there know the answer to this question, but most employees have no idea what makes it a legally protected category. So here we're going to go through the fact that a legally protected category refers to individuals' specific characteristics or attributes safeguarded under various laws against discrimination. It is illegal to discriminate against someone based on these protected categories in employment and other areas. The categories can vary depending on the jurisdiction. So is it federal, state, or local laws? And I'm going to show you what that means. And this is what you're going to use for your training. Under the federal government, and again, here I would start a conversation with you guys normally, and I would say, please, put into chat what you believe is a protected category. In fact, let's go ahead and take a minute to do that. We're actually making pretty good time. So put into chat, what do you believe is a protected category under federal law? All right, age, national origin, race, color, religion, sex, pregnancy, disability, genetic information, military and veteran status. And under sex, we have gender, gender identity, transgender status, and sexual orientation. These are all protected under federal law. Now, these are covered under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So a lot of this stuff, national origin, race, color, religion, pregnancy, disability, or no, sorry, not over here. These all came along in 1964, and they were covered under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, age discrimination has its own laws. Pregnancy literally falls under sex discrimination, and disability falls under the ADA. And then we had GINA, if you remember when that first became involved, and then military and veteran status. So these are all separate under federal law. Now, in California, where we live, I would ask again, can you name a California protected category? Of course, I don't expect for you guys to do that. There is a matching slide that I have available for you if you need it from different states. So for example, we have Connecticut, we have New York. Those are states that all have their own set of protected categories, different from federal law. If you don't fall into one of those states, then you would follow the protected categories under federal law. Now, just for giggles, I'll tell you what we have in California. Protected categories in California, and everybody knows that we're kind of crazy out here. So we've got all of this under federal law, and we have pregnancy, childbirth, breastfeeding, or related medical conditions and sex and stereotypes. We have sexual orientation, including transgender status, gender identity and gender expression. We have ancestry. We have natural hair and hairstyles. We have religious creed, dress and grooming practices, medical conditions, reproductive health decision, mental and physical disability, marital and domestic partner status. In California, if you are perceived as any of these protected categories, and yet you're not, you are still protected from discrimination. And then if you have employees who oppose any violation of law, basically meaning if you stand up for somebody because you believe that they have been discriminated against, you also become protected. Now, this section right here, for those of you who would like it, we actually have a video that covers this. Personally, as a trainer, I prefer to do this myself. But there's a lot of people who don't know or who don't understand what gender equality and inclusion means. And so we actually put together a video for people who aren't comfortable doing the training on this. I like and prefer doing it, and I prefer to have some discussion about it. So we talk here about what is gender equality. And gender equality is when all people enjoy the same rights and opportunities across all sectors of society, including the job, the work, your workplace. It involves economic participation, decision-making, and different behaviors, aspirations, and needs are equally valued and favored. Now, understanding gender. What are gender roles? What are gender stereotypes? And what are gender expressions? So when it comes to gender, people have many different beliefs about what is. However, employers need to be careful that they are not assigning responsibilities or policy requirements to individuals based on these perceived beliefs. And employees need to be sure that they are not using someone's gender or gender identity or expression or any other gender-related items to treat individuals differently. Gender protections include gender identity, transgender status, and sexual orientation. Now remember, this is not a state thing. This is now federal law. Important terms that you should know as a trainer and as an employee. Gender identity. This is an internal understanding of and identification with one's gender. Transgender, a general term that refers to a person whose gender identity differs from their gender assigned at birth. Gender expression, a person's gender-related appearance or behavior, how one presents their gender to the world. Sexual orientation refers to the gender to which a person is attracted, and non-binary is not identified as strictly either male or female. So I did kind of give you some definitions of gender-related terms, but we can't just stick to this. We have a whole bunch of different language and terms that are used. Some people are comfortable using them for themselves. Other people talk about this. And then other people, it's offensive when you talk to them about it. So I threw in this gender stereotyping for you to understand that it's really not appropriate to use these terms when you're talking with somebody. For example, you really just want to refer to them as their name, whatever they prefer to be called. All right, tips for gender inclusivity. You want to kind of challenge your own unconscious bias, and I'm here to admit that I have stuff in my head. This is how I was raised. Learning to change that through experience has made all the difference in the world. Education is helpful, but it really is experience that will actually change somebody's bias. Use the coworkers for name and pronouns, as I just said. Don't only focus on their sexuality and gender. Understand the difference between personal values and workplace behavior, and demonstrate respect for all, for everybody. Now here we have a question. Tech categories may not be used when they make decisions regarding what? Hiring, firing, compensation terms, condition and privileges of employment. Now, we're not going to do it today, but in the supervisor section, we talk about that supervisors have what we call legitimate power. And that means that they have an influence on the hiring decisions, firing decisions, how much somebody gets paid, what their terms of employment, what their conditions are. For example, do we get to go on vacation? Who gets to take holidays off? Who gets to work overtime? Who has to work overtime? So when we're talking about supervisors, they have a legitimate power, and employees just don't have. And then of course, privileges of employment, which is what I just talked about: vacation time, overtime, etc. All right, so now we're going to move out of that section and into abusive conduct. Abusive conduct is not necessarily required by law. If you only want something that's required by law, you can take this out. But it's actually a really good idea to have discussions about what abusive conduct is. Also, another thing I wanted to let you know is in these slides, in the notes section, all of these slides have explanations for what the trainer will need to say, so that you have the ability to learn exactly what we're talking about when we talk about abusive conduct. So here we have it in writing, but there's actually 2 paragraphs in the notes section, so you can prepare yourself for discussions. So abusive conduct is defined as conduct of an employer or an employee in the workplace with malice that a reasonable person would find hostile, offensive, and unrelated to an employer's legitimate business interests. So, you know, we all have people that we know and work with that are rude. They're just not really fun to work with. But they're not really being malicious with their behavior. They're just not fun. They're not good people, okay? Well, they could be good people. The word I normally use sort of escapes me. There's only one word that's coming to my mind right now, and it would be inappropriate for me to use that in a presentation. So that might happen to you as well. Make sure you don't do that when we're talking about somebody who is abusive in the workplace. However, one of the things that I like to share with people at work, if it's not work, then don't do it. Okay, so if it isn't in a legitimate business interest of the organization, there's no reason to behave that way. And if you're in human resources like I am, we see a lot of this happening. People will come in and they really just want to talk to us about it. So we have to be able to measure, is this technically illegal harassment, or is it abusive conduct? And does this person need a little bit of coaching, or do we need to talk to their boss and have their boss have a little meeting with them? So these are things as human resources people that we need to be able to find out. So real abusive conduct is repeated infliction of verbal abuse. Okay. Shouting, constant criticism, impossible expectations, setting you up for failure, and threatening, intimidating, or humiliating conduct. And this is not always done by your boss. I had a situation where I had just implemented an HR system, and the controller, or he was actually the vice president of finance, was really worried for some reason about it. And he came into my office, he slammed the door, he put his hands down on the table, and he looked me straight in the face and he said to me, "If you F up our taxes, I will slit you a new one." Now, I, trust me, had no idea what that meant. I understand that people from certain regions use that term, and when they talk about it, they don't really find it offensive. I personally found it really offensive. And so, of course, being the HR director, I went straight to my boss, the president, and said, I am really, really uncomfortable with this. So we put the guy through a little bit of coaching. We made him well, first of all, we did an investigation, because that's what you do in human resources. We found out that I'm not the only person that was offended by his behavior. He had regularly abusive conduct. So we put him through about a 1-year training program. And you know what? He changed. And I have a feeling not only did he change at work, but I imagine he was much more pleasant at home. And I'm sure his wife was grateful. I know she was grateful for what we did rather than firing him. All right. So we have this example of abusive conduct. What is it not? When you when your boss is telling you that you need to come to work on time, you need to come to work on time. That's not abusive. Now, the way the boss tells you might be considered abusive conduct. When we're doing a performance appraisal, that's not abusive conduct. The employees often, I'm sure you guys have all experienced this, they have a performance review, they get really upset, they come into HR and they want to talk to us about their job performance. And the bottom line is, we have to look and find out, well, what was it that you were supposed to do that you didn't do, or you didn't do it right, or what was it that your supervisor did? And then supervising. Supervisors are supposed to supervise. That is not abusive conduct unless it is done in a manner that would fall under the terms here that we have under abusive conduct. What is a hostile work environment? I'm going to speed up a little bit now. I think I just went off track, and we're going to go through it. But a hostile work environment has been defined from the beginning. This is nothing new. It actually is spelled out under the federal law. It is verbal harassment, physical harassment, visual harassment, cyber harassment, exclusion, intimidation. For the environment to be legally recognized as hostile, the conduct must be discriminatory in nature and either severe or pervasive enough to affect the victim's job performance or psychological well-being. Who can harassment occur? So here you would type in a chat. Well, do you think it's boss to employee? Well, the answer to that is it's anybody. It can be employee to employee. It can be employee to boss. Now, the one who has the power is the one who is in the biggest problem, and we would cover that under supervisor training. However, for basic employees, harassment can occur by anyone. What is harassment? We talked about that a little bit earlier. Wide range of behaviors. Behavior that's disturbing or upsetting. It's often repetitive and it affects their job. What does quid pro quo mean? This for that. When employment decisions or expectations are based on an employee's submission to or rejection of sexual advances. And it can be implied or actual requests for sexual favors. When we are, by the way, teaching this class, we don't ask them to give us examples of quid pro quo. You do just want to, hopefully somebody will know this for that, especially because you can read it right there on the card. But you can get into really long, drawn out scenarios that you don't really want to get into in the middle of a class with all employees in there. So examples of quid pro quo sexual harassment: a promise of reward or benefit from engaging in a sexual act or entering into a romantic relationship, or withholding benefits or changing somebody's job after ending or declining a romantic relationship. I saw that so many times in my career. It was crazy. What is discrimination? Discrimination is the act of distinguishing differences, partiality, or bias. Illegal discrimination is the act of distinguishing differences, partiality, or bias in the treatment of a person or group based on any of those protected categories that we talked about earlier. Give an example of discrimination. And here, this is a really good time to go out to your audience and actually have them give an example of discrimination. And it would be policies requiring position to be held by a specific gender without a BFOQ, which of course is bona fide occupational qualification. Assuming a woman would not want a promotion because of her family. And denying religious accommodations for holiday observances. This actually happened to me years and years ago. We had a job opening for an employment representative, and the job required a lot of training. And so I was turned down for the job because I was a single mom with 2 little kids. Well, they didn't know who they were dealing with. And I was pretty comfortable with the HR department at that point. So I went into HR and I said, oh no, I have that job now. It's now my job because you have assumed that I did not want this promotion because I had kids. Now you wouldn't do that to a guy and you did do it to me. Therefore, this job is mine. And I did get the job, by the way. It was fun. I traveled all over the United States doing college recruiting. Okay, this is new. We actually only put this into our training presentation about a year and a half ago, when we updated everything, because, you know, prior to, I don't know, maybe 2014, 15, we really didn't see a lot of it. But now, oh my goodness, we see blatant comments about individuals' protected statuses. And I mean blatant comments, especially out on Twitter and some of the, well, we don't even have Twitter anymore, on X, and some of the other social media things, sending inappropriate memes, jokes, or sexually explicit content through chats or emails, solicitation through chat or private messaging, denying meetings to individuals who should be involved, and inappropriate attire, background items, behavior on video calls. I mean, we've seen it on TV during COVID. I've seen so much of this. It's pretty crazy. I'm sure you guys have too. All right. So here we'll ask your students to give some examples of harassment. And this is actually under federal law. Everything that's on this slide is actually written, and it's been there since 1980. Making or using derogatory comments, epithets, slurs, or jokes, suggestive or obscene letters, notes, or invitations, sexual gestures, comments about an individual's body, physical touching, impeding or blocking movement, being chosen or denied based on a protected status, being asked to conduct tasks because of a protected status, and continued harassment. Now, I do get a lot of good questions on this slide, so be prepared to answer those questions. What does immediate appropriate corrective action mean? So anytime you have somebody who actually has done any of these examples, you need to do something called immediate appropriate corrective action. There's two different things that employees and humans just need to know. If you actually see the harassment occur, stop it if you can. And I'm going to give you a little bit of bystander training about that. Not everybody has the confidence to do that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Ensure the victim is protected and bring it immediately to the HR department so an investigation can ensue. Now, if somebody reports the conduct to you, so you have a friend and they tell you this happened, what do you do about it? Well, your friend probably doesn't really want you to do something about it. However, you need to talk with your friend and say, hey, we need to go to HR. I'll go with you. Okay. And just make sure that HR is aware that this is happening, because if it's happening to you, it's probably happening to other people. And as we saw in the Weinstein case, there were numerous, and I mean, like 20, 30 women who were being harassed by him, and nobody wanted to talk about it because they all wanted the job, right? But once one person opened it up, then everything came out. Why do some employees hesitate to report harassment? Well, it's risky. And this is by the way, this is a talking point that you're going to have. I like to put up, and I actually don't know how to do it in Zoom, but we use Teams when we're doing our training. And we can actually put up a little blackboard that they can type their answers in all over the screen. And this is one of the ones I like to use that for, because it's risky, it's uncomfortable, they're worried about retaliation, they're worried about losing their job. They're unsure what the law is. Are they protected? They don't want to be considered ratting somebody out, and they feel maybe like the incident was too minor and it isn't really necessary to take it to HR. Hey, take it to HR. we will know if it's too minor or not, and we'll be able to help you. Now, let me say this about that. In Weinstein's case, they wouldn't go to HR because they didn't like HR. HR was considered not valuable. There was no use in going to them. Don't be that HR person. You can get a lot of training through HRCP. Again, we use HRCP materials to make human resources really know when we do our training programs, it is about not necessarily taking the certification exam. The certification is the end where we say, yes, we're knowledgeable on a broad base, but the learning part of getting certified is really what it's all about. And that's when you're able to develop the personal skills to work with employees when they come in and they want to have a conversation with you about sexual harassment and to take a stand. And by the way, to be an ombudsman for the employees, but also a representative of management. Not always hard to do, to walk that fine line that we have to walk, but we have to be ethical and we have to know when to do the right thing and what the right thing is. All right, what is retaliation? Now, this one employees always get wrong. I have no idea why, but it's a fairly simple answer. Retaliation occurs when an employee is punished for complaining or being involved in an investigation of harassment. Retaliation. All right, here are some examples of retaliation. Being excluded from team meetings, drastic changes in job assignments or positions, employment termination, additional harassment or abusive conduct. What are ways you can help to avoid situations of harassment? Abide by your company's harassment prevention policy. This is really, I can't stress how important it is to have a good harassment prevention policy, to go over it during your training class with the employees and the supervisors. Make sure they know you have the policy and that you know that you have a signed document that says that they have the policy. Be self-aware. Avoid physical contact with others, report unacceptable behavior to management, and if necessary, correct your own behavior. You can imagine with me doing this since 1980, God, I don't even know how many years that is, but you know, how I've actually had to change the behaviors that I had, because what was socially acceptable in our society today would absolutely not be acceptable. When I tell my granddaughters some of the stuff that I've been through, they just can't believe it. You know, that happened at work. All right, I told you we'd talk about bystanders. Bystanders have become very, very important, particularly in law. Over the last 5 years, every single case that has gone through the courts, they are looking at bystander effect. Who knew about this? Who actually saw this happen? Why didn't they do anything about it? And that's regardless if you're the human resources person or the manager. If you're just a coworker. Now, again, we have a cute little video on the bystander effect that you can play through. At this point, for our mini trainers, we need a breath. So we have a 5-minute video. It's very cute and it goes through this, but I'll go through it with you right now. This is the bystander effect. Not only applies to harassment and discrimination at work, it also applies outside of work. But we are talking about harassment at work, so we're going to stick to that, and that's the theme that you want to stick with when you're having this discussion with your employees. So what can you do? You want to be something that we call an upstander. So an upstander is somebody who chooses to take positive action in situations where individuals need help. You can, by the way, find this on our YouTube channel already. It's loaded up there. It's really cute. And you can download it from there as well. Upstanders intervene safely using what we call the 3 Ds and R. So that is being direct, distracting somebody, delegating, and redirecting. Now, when we say being direct, we're going to talk about what happens with the perpetrator, the person who's doing it. So you just walk straight up to them and say, hey, what's up? What are you doing? What's going on here? For the victim, you can literally say, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? This doesn't really seem quite right. I'm here. What's going, I'm here to help. Distract. This is kind of my favorite one. I'm a very direct person, but I think I have more fun distracting people. All right, so this you use for both, and you can be creative. So my thing is, hey guys, any idea where the HR department is? That is, of course, a reminder that they have an HR department, and you can ask them, hey, when did you get that order that just came in? Or depending on what your industry is, when is the last time you saw our boss? Some way, just distract them and stop it from happening. Stop the harassment from happening. And then there's something called delegating. And this is something that you can do if you're not comfortable just walking up to the people and, getting involved. Ask a friend that might be more direct than you. Tell somebody, call a manager, call HR, even the president of the company if the situation warrants it, and do something about it. You can use your own judgment. Hopefully after this class, you'll have a really good idea of what to do in a situation like this. Go to HR and ask them. HR should handle it if you're not comfortable. And then redirecting. Change the attention to a new or different place. Change the conversation. And we just talked about that. Go, hey, it's time for lunch, right? Let's get back to work. Or where's the new product that just arrived? Finally, don't feel bad about asking for help if you're not comfortable as a bystander, but do something. Don't sweep it under the rug. Don't just go home and tell your spouse about it. Do something. All right, another thing that's been included in every and all case over the last 5 years is systemic discrimination. You've all seen it on the news. They've talked about it. It is a real thing. Again, I've been doing this since 1980, and I have seen it come out year after year after year till we actually learn to understand what systemic discrimination was. So it is a pattern or a practice that organizations do. It's not intended to be discriminatory. It's just something they do. You probably some of you may still do this. You have a lifting requirement of 100 pounds. So you must be able to lift 100 pounds, but it actually doesn't have anything to do with the job description. Somebody just wrote that in there 20 years ago because they wanted a guy in that job. Today, we have so many different tools that very few people have to lift 100 pounds at work. So you want to check that job description and make sure that you don't have something like that in there. Hiring procedures such as criminal background checks that disproportionately exclude certain groups from hiring or promotion. There are many reasons to have criminal background checks, including having an HR person, who is ethical and has never been in a lot of trouble. Somebody who works with money, somebody who works in the accounting department has access to checking accounts, those kinds of things. You can't have somebody who, went to prison for absconding with funds or something like that. So there's a lot of good reasons, but a lot of times we just don't really look at it. We go, okay, this person's background check came back negative. Boom, you're out. Testing that's not relative to the job and excludes certain groups from hiring or promotion, such as lifting requirements, which I told you about. Mandatory religious practices. We've had situations here where you're required to come in and have breakfast and coffee with the owner and pray. And while in my religious perception, oh, that sounds like a great thing. However, not everybody is my religion. And so they are not, you cannot make it mandatory. You can still do it, but it can't be mandatory for people who don't want to do it. All right. Attendance policies may discriminate against those with disabilities. So you have to look into why they're absent. And this is a really fine line that we have to walk, because we all know we can't literally ask them, but you can ask them, is there something that we can do to accommodate your situation so that you don't have so many attendance issues? And then job titles such as lineman or versus line worker. My husband for 40 years was a lineman. Well, today he'll be called a line worker, because there's lots of women who work in that job now. The third thing that is in all of the court cases over the last 5 years is unconscious or implicit bias. And this is what I actually did talk about a little bit earlier too. I find myself constantly having to check my own implicit bias. Mostly not so much based on race. California is a very diverse state, and I don't think racism is as prevalent as you see in the media, but I do find myself looking at certain people because of their hairstyle or ironically their age. I'm up there where age discrimination is already way in the past. But anything that we make a determination about a person, let's say you're not going to hire a guy because he comes in and he's got 40 years of experience, and you say this person couldn't possibly be she couldn't have the technological skills that we need. And so there are ways to test for that. You don't judge based on their age. And I always ask this question, it's a conversation question: where does unconscious bias come from? Well, it comes from the way you were raised. It comes from your culture. It comes from maybe the culture pretty much sums it all up. It comes from your religion. And all of this stuff is something that has been ingrained in us since we were little kids. Can we change it? Yes. Do we have to change it? No. But do we have to understand what is socially acceptable in our current society and adapt to that in the workplace? Absolutely. All right, what are the effects of harassment on the individual? It can be psychologically damaging. It hurts their self-esteem, makes them feel powerless. It increases their stress level. It decreases their performance. And in many cases, it stops them from being able to develop in their profession. What are the effects of harassment on the individual? Oops, that's where we were just at. All right, what are the effects of harassment on the workforce? Poor morale, loss of productivity, increased turnover, and safety issues. Lots of safety issues. Not just because of the fact that there's harassment going on, but you'll literally find people who aren't working as safely as you might have expected them to, because they feel like they're being harassed. And then decrease in profits for the company, lawsuits and settlements, negative publicity, and difficulty attracting new employees. And when I say decrease in profits, I'm really talking about production here. So when you have a hostile work environment, people are not doing their jobs and they're not working at their highest potential. And that's where you really find a decrease in profits. Yes, lawsuits and settlements are not fun if you've been through any of them, and I've been through plenty. Never, by the way, never when I was the HR director. I always came in as the HR director, and they already had 5 lawsuits. Then once we got in, we started using this process that I'm working with you on today, then those lawsuits stopped. All right, what happens after a complaint is made to the company? Well, HR has to do an investigation, so keep that in mind. Supervisors cannot do investigations. Human resources has to be trained, and they have to do a fair, complete, and timely investigation. Has to be the on-site human resources person. Now, in California, right now, HR consultants cannot do investigations. They have to be either an attorney or an actual private investigator. Outside of, however, inside human resources practitioners are the ones who are supposed to be doing it. So outside of the state of California, that does not always hold true. I have several friends in New York who do investigations, and that's their whole job. All right, interviews are conducted to find supporting facts, and we want to make sure that we give the accused person of harassment an opportunity to respond. How do we file a complaint with the EEOC? So employees or job applicants, and by the way, under federal law, we have to tell them this. In the beginning, I was like, wait a minute, we don't want to give them the information of exactly how to file a complaint. But if you're going to do this training, you have to tell your employees what the information is. So employees or job applicants who believe that they have been illegally harassed may file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission within 180 days of the date of harassment. In California, we have 300 days, but outside of California, they have 180 days to file their complaint. Remedies if the employer is found guilty of allowing illegal harassment. I just said that wrong. I'm going to correct it if there's anybody in there from California. It's 3 years, not 300 days. Sorry. All right, remedies of the employer is found guilty of allowing illegal harassment. What happens? So there will be corrective action, meaning we have to correct whatever we're doing wrong in the organization. We have to give the person their job back. We have to give them back pay, front pay. We have to make changes to our policy. We have to do anti-harassment training. We have to provide something called compensatory damages, punitive damages, expert witness fees. Then we have time, it says recruitment, and that recruitment means the time that we had to, go out and find potentially somebody else. And then we have to pay attorney's fees and more. So for those of you, outside of California, if you were sued and if you were found guilty, or if you even had a claim with the EEOC and you were found guilty, these are the damages. These are the punishment that would happen to the employer. Steps to take if you're the victim of harassment. This is always hard. Tell a person that what they said or did is offensive or inappropriate. Only people like me who've been doing anti-harassment training for forever are comfortable telling somebody, hey, that's offensive or inappropriate. There's probably a lot of you out there. There's a lot of trainers, I think, that would be comfortable telling them. HR people, if they've been trained and they're confident in their jobs and they're certified and all that kind of stuff, they're probably comfortable in doing it. But the average employee is not comfortable doing it. So we put number 2 here. If telling the offender is too difficult and uncomfortable, ask HR or any company leader for help. If the problem is not resolved, then contact the EEOC or applicable state agency. And if you still have no satisfaction, you are free to hire or consult with an attorney, but the process does not require a lawyer. Now, this is not required under federal law to put this in your training. In California, they literally tell us, this is it. You have to put this in your training. Here are some important tips. Refrain from gossip, rumors, or other discussions or speculations about employees outside of work. Address people by their preferred name and pronoun, and report inappropriate behavior you see, hear, or are told about. So wrapping this up, employee behaviors play a crucial role in creating and maintaining respect in the workplace. Here are some key behaviors that contribute to a positive culture. Respect and inclusivity. Now, I'm seeing on the news, everybody's talking about inclusivity. What does it mean? It's not a big deal. And honestly, as long as I've been in the work environment, we've always treated everybody with respect and inclusivity. It really is just about treating everyone respectfully and valuing diverse perspectives and backgrounds helps create an environment where all employees feel valued and included. Empathy and support, showing empathy towards colleagues, offering support when needed, and being considerate of others' feelings contribute to a caring and supportive work environment. And then professionalism, demonstrating professionalism in all interactions, maintaining a strong work ethic, and adhering to the organization's policies and standards sets a positive example for others. Now, this is interactive exercise that you will have with your students. So you'll ask the question, harassment is wrong. It is problematic to the organization in any ways, but why is it illegal? So you already answered that in the beginning of the presentation. Wrapping up, what can you do to ensure a positive and productive work environment that benefits individuals and the organization? We just answered that question. If you know or see a coworker being harassed, what can you do? We talked about that. If you know or see a coworker being harassed, what can you do? And we talked about that. What one thing from today's class resonated with you? What can you take away? And this is the whole wrapping it up takeaway thing. And so you'll have, everybody needs to, by the way, I never do a class with more than 25 people in it. So this is, kind of insane. I think we have over 250, 260 people in this presentation. I recommend to you as trainers, please don't ever have more than 25 people in a class. Okay, you got one stray, have 26, right? But in order to make adult learning valuable, you have to have interactivity. Adults can't sit for maybe 15 minutes without interacting. Then I do an exercise called Everyone Has a Voice. And this is another one that we use with the Blackboard. We ask them to answer this question: what do you personally find offensive at work? And when this stuff starts flashing up on the screen, it's really impressive. And in some ways it's scary, and you don't really know who's answering it. So it is completely done anonymously. Now, if you're in a small classroom and you're doing this presentation live, which by the way, this works really well in a live presentation as well as in a webinar. You have them just write everything on a piece of paper, or you can use their cell phone, and that will also pop up on the screen. And if you have used the paper approach, then you just you collect their papers and you read their answers aloud. You want to remind them to please be sure to sign the training record. Again, I can't emphasize how important having their training records are. Even as a training company, our clients will call us, a new HR manager comes in, right? And they need to know, did we have the training done? I see your name here. Looks like something happened, but I can't find any training records. we always have those training records. We keep copies of the training records. We know who's been trained. We know who at least has been signed up to be trained. A lot of times we get phone calls where they never did the training and they left the company. So that's another issue. And then you have to deal with that if you are working on an EEOC case. But the evidence is always there. Hey, we paid for them to do the training. They just didn't get it done. Now, a lot of times they're going to look back at the HR manager and say, why didn't you keep up with this? But anyway, training records are critical. Please complete the certificate of completion. You want to have that in their employment file. You may scan that and put it on the internet and then shred them. And then always get a training evaluation. Half the people won't do it. That's fine. But you'll learn different things that might actually help you do your presentation a little bit better. Okay, and of course, we have to have our disclaimer, and you have to have yours too, that promoting a respectful workplace is intended only as general information about employment and business-related matters and is not legal advice. It is important to understand that no human resources product or program can stop legal claims by employees, and no warranty is expressed or implied by that HR Coach LLC DBA, Train Me Today products and services will do so. If you have legal questions, you should consult with qualified labor law legal counsel. So that we actually have an attorney on staff and he told us to put that in there. I don't know if I like it, but we've had it for years. So thank you very much. You can contact us at trainmetoday.com and there's our phone number if you need to give us a call, and you can also email us at support@trainmetoday.com. And Terry, I'm ready to take on some questions.
Great, because we've got a few. I know that there's a lot going on in the chat section. So if you posted a question in chat, you might want to repost it in the Q&A section so we can find it. And I know that we're past the hour. If you need to jump off, that's fine. If you have a question, Jacquelyn's willing to stick around and answer some of these questions for you. So Jacquelyn, we had a question back on your slide that had the statistics, and they wanted to know what the right-hand side from the list meant, what that refers to.
That's right at the top.
Right back at the beginning, I think.
There's a lot of slides up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there.
44%, which one? 44% have experienced harassment at work.
I think they were just wondering what the graph represents.
Oh, I actually don't know. Funny, that's very interesting.
It might just be illustrating
yeah. But
data.
you know what? Thank you for asking that question. And this is one of those situations. I actually could make a cool little pie chart. So I'm going to do that.
Great. Is there anything in the law to prevent nepotism?
No.
Though there could be company policies that do.
Yes, yeah. So this is really important for us as HR people to understand the difference between what is law and what is company policy. And we also have to be careful with the whole nepotism thing, because you don't want to show favoritism, but of course, if it's your daughter who works there, you probably are going to show some favoritism. However, as long as you treat everybody fairly, you're not going to have any problems with nepotism. But again, I've worked at big companies, and you can't have your supervisor can't be related to you. So they have, very sort of strict things, but not anything like your sister can't work here at all. Your sister can work over in manufacturing and you're working in the admin office. Now, I will tell you almost everywhere I've worked, and it's just not a good idea. HR cannot have family working in the company where they work.
Good rule of thumb.
Yeah, it's really sticky when that happens. But as
Thank you.
far as the law and policy, two different
All
things.
right, and here's another question regarding piercings. In California, is there any laws regarding piercings?
Yes, under OSHA safety regulations, if it is in any way going to get caught in a machine, so let's say you work at a company and you have a slicing machine where you have to slice ham, and you're wearing earrings that are too long and they could get caught and they would rip your ear out, that would be a safety violation. When it comes to just the general public, we really don't have anything specific to piercings. Now, I see companies who have company policies about tattoos and wearing sleeves, if you're familiar with those. I don't know how those are going to, how that would hold up in court, but this whole idea of somebody having the piercings, again, is just a safety issue. It doesn't have anything to do with their appearance.
Okay, thank you. Will a quiz at the end of training be evidence of a training record?
Yep, yes, it would. If you were to, we have a whole program called Train the Trainer. It's a 4-hour program. And if you were to participate in that program, you would actually get a quiz. And it's like 20 questions.
And here's another question. What do you see as trends lately for successful absorption of this kind of training? Interactive with an HR trainer seems to give good interaction with HR and discussion rather than just sending a link for the employees to take the training.
100%. We offer online training. I personally don't like online training. However, you know, if you don't offer it, you don't stay competitive. But when your human resources manager is the one who's doing the training, the people know they can come to you and talk. And again, I can't emphasize enough, small classes. Never train your supervisors with your employees, by the way, because they won't talk when their supervisor's in the room. And you really need to engage adults. I hope that answers your question.
All right. It looks like we've got one more question that I can find. Is there any kind of protection for political activity?
No. Not, let me say this. I don't know if there is in any other states. I know there's not in California. We do have, like, okay, here's an example. If you go off to a rally because you're one or the other, you cannot be punished for that. But if you go off to the rally during work hours and you miss work and you didn't ask for approved time off, now you have an attendance issue. But it doesn't have anything to do with your political affiliations. So, I mean, in some ways, I guess we are protected, and it does state that in our law that you're protected based on your political affiliations. You can't be fired because of your political affiliations. However, you also have to obey attendance laws and those kinds of things.
All right, another question came in. Someone brought up a question about people with unfriendly interactions. Others mentioned it could be due to a medical reason. What do you tell others as far as their interactions with that curt person that may have divergent thinkers?
This is where we have to learn to be able to coach and counsel people. They come in and they're complaining about another person who has an issue. And so we have to look at the entire issue. One of the things is we are not psychologists, so we have to be really careful never to play that role as being a psychologist. We are coaches, but we have to be taught how to do that. So if that situation happened with me, and I've been, I have a couple of different coaching certificates, I would just listen and I really wouldn't do anything about it. I would just listen and ask them, what would help them. And there's like 5 questions that you can draw out from people. What is it that they actually want? And generally what they want is they want the other person to change, and the other person isn't going to change. So they have to change the way they respond to the other person. But you can't just come right out and say you have to change the way you react. You have to help them talk through it so that they come to the conclusion that, without, by the way, telling them that this person has a disability, because that's not your job either. So it's like the same old question with body odor. It's difficult, but you have to deal with it, but in different ways.
All right, let's take one more question. If you are the only HR at a small company and are regularly receiving complaints about the top director at the company with no one to go to, how do you handle this?
Oh boy. All right. The reason why I'm sighing is because I left a job for exactly this reason. It was a very, very large company, and it was the vice president of marketing, who was sexually harassing many people. This guy he was married. He had a pregnant girlfriend back. When I came back, I decided to quit, and they offered me a huge settlement. So I'm one of those people who actually received a gigantic settlement, and I took it. I'm a little bit ashamed that I took it, that I didn't just sue him, but I was working on my master's degree at the time, and so it gave me some time to go to school. So, the answer to your problem is walk carefully. In HR, we are often shoot the messenger situation, and you have to kind of look in your own it's an ethical dilemma is what you're in. I would, because I did it, I would tell the owner or the president of the company that this is going on, and it's highly possible that it would end up in a case like we had with the chief financial officer. Some coaching, you could get some coaching, some counseling, some additional training, and this person could actually be trained and coached right out of their bad behavior. But again, it's HR, it's what we do.
All right, well, this has been fabulous information, and from the comments in the chat, other people agree. So thank you so much for being here. If any of you who are still on the webinar, just know Jacquelyn offers some great training programs, and so if you need help knowing how to train your own employees or provide training for your employees, their company does this, among other things. We'll include some links to Jacquelyn's offerings in the email that we send out that will have information, the activity IDs for attending the webinar today, as well as a link to the recording. Thanks again, Jacquelyn. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all of you who attended today.
Thank you.